I feel like even though we're recording this on so-called April Fool's Day, if we said, don't worry, this is not one of those elaborate pranks, people would then think it is one of those elaborate pranks.
It is an elaborate prank. It's just been going on for 16 years.
That's right.
Well played.
And today, it'll come to fruition.
Happy almost birthday.
You mean
to Bill.
fruition? Well, thank you very much. That'll be, actually, I think that'll be a week from today.
Oh, a week from today. Oh, man, I got the day wrong.
I
That's
moved
better.
to withdraw
We'd see you
Steve's
until,
happy birthday.
That's
and
right.
table it.
And censor him heavily.
Don't you mean censure? Since you're going to correct my fruitation?
What did I say?
Actually, you said censor. Actually, since the reason why I say fruitation is because like 30-some years ago, maybe pushing 40 years ago now, I had a friend who had a boss who was frequently expounding malapropisms, and one of his congenital defects was that he would constantly say, well, I can't wait till this project comes to fruitation.
Fruitation.
And this guy was the news director at an AM radio station.
Well, I'm sure he meant well, irregardless.
Yes.
Don't
he
do
did,
it.
irregardless. Not without regard, mind you.
Oh, dear Lord.
So
I've been thinking about the deep issues in life.
You've been thinking about
maybe
what?
You guys can help me. I've been wrestling with a philosophical concept. It's
Okay.
just been
What's
bugging the
that?
daylights out of me. So here's
We're here to serve.
it's a thought experiment. So let's say that you were running down the road trying to loosen your load.
Okay.
What do you think what would be on your mind?
Aside from 7 women?
That's the answer I've been looking for.
That's the number
Steve,
of
you're
perfection.
so-
Well, sometimes I've got a world of trouble on my mind.
Oh my God. Yes! Eureka!
That's the first time I heard that song. I didn't realize that it was an Eagles song. I heard Jackson Browne singing it, and who may have wrote it or helped the Eagles write it or something. I don't know.
think he did co-write that one.
Yeah, but I didn't know. I was. I think it's on. It's on. He has an album called "Running on Empty," I think, or something like that. I forget what it is. Anyway, great album. I had it my freshman year in college and would play that over and over again. Awesome.
I'm trying to figure out, I have to do the math.
Yeah.
I need a calculator. Hang on a second. Just take a moment. 7 divided by 1.
Yeah, except no, that's "Take It Easy" is the name of the song, not "Running on Empty."
Oh, that's true. Never mind. Thank you.
Brown.
But "Running on Empty"
Brown
was
did
the album name.
write that one. Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought maybe he had co-written that one with J.D. Souther, but I asked Grok, and Grok didn't mention J.D. Souther. So.
Well, maybe J.D. Souther doesn't want he doesn't want Grok to have his name in its mouth.
That could be.
I'm trying to figure out what his approval rating is. What is, if you've got if you get 1 out of 7, that's what? That's like about,
Yeah, but
nearly
4,
12%, 13%?
Yeah.
Seriously though,
12,
Phil, but
13%.
4 of them are domineering, and 1 wants to kill him. So
Yeah, you can rule that one
and
right
1
out.
is in the friend zone. So what does that leave you with?
Well, but clearly the one that's a friend of his is the one that's,
She
loosening
says
his
she's
load.
a friend of his.
Oh, you make a good point.
Yeah.
Everybody knows women are liars anyway, filthy liars. They're
Oh,
no
I
good
feel
for
like
nothing. Jezebels.
I feel like I'm falling into the Evan what's-his-name trap.
Say it.
Yeah, the Evan Sayet trap, where I've had the privilege of having coffee or lunch with him a couple of times in my life, and maybe both times, but at least one time, he went into his explication of Bruce Springsteen's song, and he's so passionate about it. He's like, now, let me start out. The screen door slams. Where are we? Where are we in this picture, in this story? And he tries to get you to answer all the questions.
I knew a Springsteen head.
And it's Mary. Mary, what religion do you think Mary is? And he's got he's going to do like a 600-page exegesis of that. What is the song? I don't even know what the name of the song is.
I'm not really a Springfield
Like a
fan,
vision, she
so
dances
I
across
can't
the
remember.
porch while the radio plays. Show a little faith, there's magic in the night, you ain't a beauty. Yeah, that's the greatest line, I think, in rock and roll for romance. You ain't a beauty, but hey, you're all right. and that's all right by me. Oh, thanks, honey. Thank you.
That's sweet.
That's right.
I
That's
find
just
you
sweet.
adequate too.
That's right.
Happy Valentine's Day.
You're not substandard.
You
is all
meet
I'm
my
saying.
minimal
Adiposity.
expectations.
That's right. You know the recommended daily allowance? It's the minimum daily allowance. So I had a couple of incidents happen to me today. First, the biggest news I think of the week is the polar orbit of this
Yes.
Dragon crew, which I didn't even know. First of all, I haven't been keeping up as well as I should have, and I saw that I got an alert from the next launch app. What is that called? Next Spaceflight or something?
Next space flight. Yeah.
Next Spaceflight app, and it said that a Dragon, or it said that a SpaceX rocket was going to go up, and I was like, oh, I'll watch that. I figured it was Starlink or something. It turns out it's a crewed, I hate to say crude, CREWED, crewed mission.
Yeah. It's a Crew Dragon, and once you say Crew
Yes.
Dragon, people go, "Oh, I bet there are people on board."
Well,
Isn't this the first time in human history that there's been a crew in polar orbit?
yes.
And it's private. It's privately financed. All four people are not. They're not NASA. They're not naval aviators or Air Force pilots.
And they popped
So
the
for-
top.
And
Yeah.
they did a little spacewalky thing kind of
Yeah.
thing, or just
Oh,
stuck
are they
their
going
head
to
out
do a
the window?
spacewalk thing?
Well, if you pop the top, you got to be well. You don't have to be in an external suit, I guess, but generally speaking,
Well, I don't think
I don't think
it's
really
opened
a-
up the capsule. They just popped
Yeah.
the lid.
Yeah, they're
okay,
not doing
okay.
a spacewalk, but somebody's got to get out there and squeegee the windshield.
That's right. Well, I
So
hope
for
they
our
don't go to one of
friends-
those gas stations where the windshield fluid is always empty or dirty, or,
Oh,
and you can't, and the squeegee's falling apart.
and they can order the egg salad sandwich at the
Oh yeah. Yeah, that's where you want to get anything that has a shelf life of 6 hours is what you want to get at a place like that.
Man.
For the two or three people who may not be aerospace engineers that are following the show,
Yes, please.
Yeah, so most orbits are inclined to the equator of the Earth. They're inclined by about 23 degrees. That's the ecliptic, and that's kind of why you see a sine wave when you look at where the thing is projected over a flat surface of the Earth. But a polar orbit goes straight up and over the poles of the Earth, and the Earth rotates underneath it. And the reason that polar orbits are so hard to achieve, and that I hadn't, if you'd asked me, has there ever been a crewed mission in a polar orbit before? I probably would have said no, but it never occurred to me until they told me they were going into a polar orbit.
It didn't occur to me till they launched and they were talking about it. I was like, wait a minute, this has never happened?
So
This
why
has
are
never
so
happened.
why are polar orbits so rare?
Because
It's hard.
The Earth has to push the rocket.
That's exactly correct.
Yeah.
Because you don't
You have
get
to overcome the
you-
Earth's momentum.
You don't get the angular. You don't
Yeah.
get the angular push that the rotation of the Earth gives you, which is why
And that's a
all
nice
launched.
boost.
It is.
Oh yeah,
and
it's
that's
the same reason why it's so hard to launch things into the sun. You think that's so easy. The sun's in this big gravity well, except it's not, because in addition to overcoming the Earth's gravity well, now you have to overcome the Earth's momentum, which is even greater. It's like 3 times greater than I think.
Yeah,
it's,
you gotta
I
slow
wanna
it
say
down.
It's 30 meters per second instead of 9. to
we
escape
apologize
that.
for the metric system, by the way. Sometimes there's just no way around it.
Sometimes it's orbital stuff. You got to kind of do that sometimes. But yeah, it's much harder
And this
to
is why.
divert into the sun than it is just to keep going in the same orbit you're in.
That's why we launch. Rockets from the southernmost state in the continental U.S. and why we also launch them from the second southernmost state in the continental U.S. You want to be as close to the equator as possible.
This
the
is
Europeans
also why
have
it
a
would be
place.
good to own Panama.
Take Panama is the term you're looking for.
That's right.
No, I don't need to launch out of a jungle. That's for savages and Europeans. I don't need to.
Oh,
see
it won't be a
the
jungle
French
after
do
we're
that.
done with it, Bill.
It's a good point.
We're gonna
Spaceport USA it.
paradise and put up a park.
Put up a launch facility. So anyway, I was just very excited to see that, and it was funny because they show the astronauts even when they're getting to the point, they're still in pretty heavy G's as they're going up, and they're showing a shot from inside the capsule. Now the camera's down kind of below the feet of the astronauts, looking up toward them, and what you don't realize is what the astronauts are looking at. Now they've got panels of screens in front of them, and they have to kind of look up to see that. The guy sitting on the far right from the camera angle they had looked to me as if he had expired. His jaw was kind of hanging open, and it looked like his eyes were rolled back in his head, and he was just staring upward. I was like, oh man, did he have a heart attack or something?
He's probably just looking at the Earth.
Yes.
By the way, I was thinking...
Until he pulled out the gravitational test device, which in this case was a plush polar bear, which is what when they get up into space, then they release this plush toy and it floats around and it's cool to see. I didn't know he was like that.
I had thought, because my awareness generally lags about 3 months behind actual time, that, oh man, they're going to be up there and it's going to be dark over the North Pole, but that's because I'm thinking it's still winter. We just passed the summer, the vernal equinox was just a week ago.
Yeah, so
they're getting perfect. They're essentially getting perfect half lighting on the North and South poles. So they'll get to see the North and the South Pole and that's unusual.
In great daylight, yeah.
Now,
that sun reflecting off of all that ice. Wow.
Now was the vernal equinox named after Jules Verne? Is that how that works?
No, it was vernal means spring or young, I think.
Oh. I thought about Verne from the commercials way back in the day, and then I figured Jules Verne.
What was his name? Jim.
What was that guy's
name?
Jim Varney. He was awesome. He was a really, really
very
clever
funny
guy.
I did see some video.
It was like Shakespearean train. This is just a shtick he came up with that resonated.
So was Jason Alexander. It's a thing. That's where you should go, kids. Go get your Shakespearean acting training, and then maybe you can make some real money doing something else.
That's right. I forgot we talked about Jason Alexander being good enough for Hamlet, but not being right for Hamlet.
Start working on your Falstaff.
I did see that. Did you see any of the video? I saw some of the video of it going over one of the poles, and the.
Oh no, I didn't. It's
just the terrain is magnificent.
I put it on Instapunnit this morning. You really
I'll have a look. I'll take a look
down and look for that. Yeah.
And it's going at like 27,000 kilometers per hour or something. So
no need for that. We've already. It's doing 17,500 miles an hour.
What's that? Oh, I'm sorry.
There's no need for that.
I'm sorry. I apologize.
It's real damn fast, to put it in American.
That's right. Yeah, just put it in real measure. So two things happened to me this week that are, I think, a tragedy and wonderful at the same time, that some of our viewers will have experienced. Do you know that plastic thing that goes under your engine that's supposed to keep gunk from flying up from the road and hitting the engine? It's called a splash guard. So anyway, some time back, splash guards are put there on modern vehicles so that they can snag on the curb stop things that they put in parking lots and be torn off and then drag on the ground for a period of time until you finally get so frustrated. That's right. And until
you just rip it off.
Until it flies off at highway speeds, or you just rip it off. So some time ago, I actually took mine off and got an aftermarket replacement. And when I installed it, I thought, well, there weren't any instructions, because the Chinamen didn't know how to write these kind of words. And so I put every screw that they had, I put in where it seemed to belong, but it still wasn't fastened in the back in any way. And I thought, well, maybe the forces of thermodynamics keep it in. I don't know. I don't know what keeps it there. So I just figured, well, that's the way it is. Well, as it turns out, that's not the way it is. It was supposed to have some sort of things to hold it up. And during the course of driving for a while, we snagged it on one of those curb things. And so it was it was hanging down. And when you get up to about 70 miles an hour, it sounds like a helo about ready to take off. It's just like this.
Yeah.
So today, I asked my wife if it would be too great an inconvenience for her to drive my vehicle to work. And it's hard for her to get up. She's a tiny little thing. It's hard for her to get up into my vehicle, which is higher. And but she agreed to do that. And so here's the simplicity of the task, gentlemen. Especially men will understand this. All I had to do was stop that noise. Okay, that's the goal. Stop the noise.
Yes.
This could be accomplished in a variety of ways. I could have taken a screwdriver.
Duct tape or WD-40.
I could have removed the splash guard and the noise would stop. But I thought, well, then I wouldn't have the splash guard, and so I didn't do that. Then I thought, well, I could get zip ties. So that instituted about a 45-minute search of my house for those zip ties that I had bought for just such a purpose, but of course, don't know where they are right now.
Those things are so handy.
Oh, it's just, you might as well not
I
even...
use them for everything.
Don't buy zip ties unless you're going to use them right now, is my point.
Oh, no. My wife keeps them with her gardening stuff in one particular corner of the garage, and when I need zip ties, she's got them in sizes. She's got them in colors.
Would your wife mind holding on to some things for me? Could I just send her?
Sure, she would mind a lot.
Yes, she would. So anyway, the zip ties I couldn't find. So then, while looking for the zip ties, I stumbled upon a bungee cord in the garage, and I thought, I wonder if I could just bungee that up. So then I lay under the car for probably another 40 minutes, trying to figure out how to attach the other end of the bungee cord. I found a hole to put the one end in, and it looked like a great idea. And that's the problem with these things, because it always looks like a great idea at first. If it immediately seemed to be a terrible idea, I would have abandoned it instantly. But instead, it looked promising. And so finally, after 40 minutes, I decided there's no way to hook the other end of the bungee cord in. And I broke down like a man and cried, and then drove to the auto parts store. I get in there, and the guy he takes me over to this carousel that has dozens upon dozens of, I asked him if he had those little plastic retainer clips that you pop up into something and then they spread out inside, and it's kind of like the screws you use to attach sheetrock that spread those things. Anyway, he goes, yeah, here they are on this display. And he was not going to lift a finger to help me find the right one for my vehicle.
No.
And every car maker has a different kind. And,
yes.
And those little push retainers are used in a variety of applications on your vehicle. And they're all different sizes. And so I'm trying to find the right one. Finally, I find what I'm positive was the correct one. And it's in a little space that says out of stock. So I go to the guy at the counter and I say, hey, do you happen to have more of these that you just haven't put out on the carousel yet? And he goes, well, maybe. I mean, we just got a delivery. You see that stack over there? And there's this stack on a pallet that's higher than my head that's shrink wrapped, and there's a bunch of these plastic tubs. And he goes, I'd have to go through that stack, and it's me that has to go through it. And he was basically saying, look, I don't care about your little problem.
Yeah.
Would have been would have been much better just say, no, sir, I'm sorry. Get something in
Yes, but he had to
days.
tell me that it was possible, but that he wasn't going to do it.
He wasn't going to do it.
Yes. So then, to ice the cake, and actually the only virtuous thing the guy did was he recommended that I go to O'Reilly Auto Parts around the corner. And so I get in the car, I drive around the corner, go to O'Reilly. O'Reilly is apparently out of stock of that specific one, but they did have one that looked like the one that I had plucked out of the bottom of the car. And I said, okay, we're going to give this a shot. Anyway, for $4.59, I got 3 pieces of plastic about this big. They're just little push pins. And it doesn't matter.
They're like $8 each on my
insane.
car.
It doesn't matter, by the way. They're all $4.59 no matter what car you have. And it just depends. Some are cheaper than others, but they just put more in the container. So mine were among the most expensive. There was 3 in the container, but other containers had like 8 or 10 in them for, US made cars. Anyway, so I got the clips. I stuck them in. We're going to take a little trip to see some friends soon, and I'm hoping that those will hold in place, because if that thing starts flubbeting again, I am just going to stop the car and rip that thing off the bottom of it.
I don't blame you one little bit.
I will pull up over a curb just to drag the car back.
So
you should find a ramp someplace, and make sure you get one of the Dukes of Hazzard's horns before you do that. So you
That's right.
Right.
On Friday, I gave my 14-year-old a second driving lesson. It was his first on pavement. We hit the high school parking lot, so it was spring break, and there was nobody there.
Excellent place to do it.
Yes.
And it's just I learned out in the country. I've probably been driving for 2 years before I ever drove on a paved road. So I would like my kids to, advance a little faster than I did. And he was doing great, but going around one of those medians, it's got a curb around it. He was cutting it really close especially for a left-hand turn. And I told him, you got to take those a little wider or you're going to scrape the wheels, and I don't want people to think that a woman drives my car.
Oh.
and he said,
Bill Burr smiles.
Nate said exactly what you just said, Scott.
Bill Burr has gotten real soft lately. He's gone off the deep end, unfortunately.
Soft, like in the sense that
That's a
he's
shame.
not as brutal with his humor anymore?
No, it's not just that he's not just brutal with his humor. He's become kind of a social justice warrior.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well,
I saw something
he's
about
in a
that.
play.
Maybe it's you who told me.
I just read a review. He is in a revival on Broadway of Glengarry Glen Ross. And of the actors that they mentioned in the review that I read, he got the best review. Like
He's a good actor.
Really?
He can really,
Yeah.
He's a good actor. Yeah.
No, I had no idea. Never would have guessed it.
Apparently, this is like the third or fourth revival of Glengarry Glen Ross, which has not been out for all that long. I mean, just a couple of decades. But and I don't think the play, if I'm not mistaken, the play does not have what the movie has, which is the classic, Alec
Baldwin
scene. Yeah. Put that coffee
I
down.
believe you're right.
You got to add that in.
You got to add that in. Yes, you got to add that in. You got to sit there, rent the movie, and with a notepad, you got to write the lines down, and you got to find the best-looking guy you can,
right.
and have him come in.
You should just cue the audience at some point, and the entire audience goes, "Put that coffee down. Coffee is for closers." Like just on the beat.
You know
they
what?
shout the
Yeah,
whole
make
time.
it like going to see a melodrama.
You guys don't never. I'd be amazed if you had experienced British pantomime, but pantomime is a theater form usually for kids, and it's almost always during Christmas, where there's just lots and lots and lots of audience interplay, where the characters interact with the audience, and they go back and forth, and and anytime you see this evil monster, you're supposed to shout out, "Watch out, Puss!" for Puss in Boots and all the rest of this stuff, right? Yeah, so that they should have like pantomime for Glengarry Glen Ross, where they bring out the big chalkboard, and the guy spins it over and he puts to the pointer, and then the audience goes A B C. Always be closing.
Midnight showings.
It's like a Rocky Horror experience. Yeah.
Where everybody throws BMW keys at the screen.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. I'd be impressed if you guys can remember what the second one is. A, B, C, always be closing, and then there's another one. It's 4 letters. D, B, R, D, or something like that.
No, I can't remember now.
Yeah. No, it's any 4 letters. I just made those up.
It's AIDA, I think. Attention,
AIDA.
Interest, decision, something or like
action, right?
Action. Yeah, that's as a salesperson, it's so funny because even though that was just a parody of like the worst kind of sales manager boss, salespeople in general love that scene.
Oh, yeah.
It has the feel. It has the ring of truth to me, man. I wouldn't doubt that sales meetings were any different than that.
I love when he holds up the little bundle and he goes, "These are the new leads, the Glengarry Glen Ross leads."
And you can't have them.
That's right.
Because these are for closers.
Yeah. God, it's
you see this watch?
Movie.
It's worth more than your car.
That's who I am.
Did you guys ever see Tin Men?
No, I know about it, but
about air traffic controllers.
No.
That's different. Tin Men are selling siding, aren't they?
Pushington is about the air traffic controller.
That's right.
Yeah, Tin Men are about the guys that sell aluminum siding.
Yeah,
and the only thing I remember about that movie is that they're talking about this one guy who was like a legendary tin salesman, aluminum siding guy, and he basically had a yardstick, and he had cut 4 inches out of the middle of the yardstick. And he says, nobody checks the middle of the yardstick. As long as it starts with the 1 inch and ends with 36 inches, nobody notices that 18 to 22 are missing or whatever the case may be. So he's got a shorter yardstick, so he's selling more siding.
That's genius.
Wow.
Genius. Yeah, it's genius.
It's awful, but it's genius.
Yep. It's awful genius.
What is the... I've just finished reading a book by Thomas Kuhn called The Structure of Scientific Revolutions. Have you ever read this?
No.
It is fascinating. And some other book that I was reading recommended. It was written in I want to say the 1950s, maybe, something like that. Anyway, this guy, he writes really well, so it's really easy to follow, but he's basically studying how scientific revolutions came to be and trying to analyze the elements that lead to a scientific revolution. And, basically is when it gets to a point where an existing paradigm can no longer answer some of the most troubling questions, then the field becomes ripe for a paradigm shift. And he was really the guy
and we are there right now.
And improved astronomy started revealing some weaknesses in the Newtonian model, and that's when Einstein came along.
And the Einsteinian model and the Standard Model are on their way out.
Yeah, I was going to say, but it can
James
still
Webb.
take decades and decades for the revolution, so-called, to happen. And he was really the guy who came up with the concept that we've used for everything now, which is paradigm, which he more thought of as kind of exemplars. But this idea where you wake up in a whole new world once your paradigm shifts or changes because of the change in scientific thinking. And he just goes back and he analyzes several different scientific so-called revolutions. Really, really good. I listened to it. I probably should have read it in a text version, but it was an easy listen and really inspiring to read. And then my next book, by coincidence, I'm listening right now to a book called Inventology by a guy named Pagan Kennedy. And
Pagan?
Gee, your parents love you. Yes. And he's talking about invention, and they always say, they always say that necessity is the mother of invention. People find some problem, they try to solve it. But actually, as he and others have studied the history of invention, they find a lot of times inventions have come not from a need that then somebody had to figure out a way to fix, but just from fiddling around. And a lot of times, the solution presents first, and then you go looking for a problem that it'll work for. And in it,
Dicking around is the mother of invention.
yes, and in it he talks about tinkering around a lot. And you probably know this, but I didn't know this, that apparently back in the day there were people who were kind of thought of as being sort of seedy characters who would go from town to town, and they would fix metal tools and such by basically melting tin into them, and they were tinkers, and tinkering became kind of an insult for these sort of just layabout characters who went. Yeah, and they went from town to town, and they were actually providing a useful service. But because of their mobile nature, I think they probably came into town and
putting tin
doesn't
in where
work.
steel was
Doesn't-
needed.
they put in a little
wait a minute.
tin to the farmer's tools and then a little wood to the farmer's daughter, is my guess, is how they got their reputation.
Isn't tinkering from the word tinker? A tinker's a shoemaker, right? I don't give a
No,
tinker's
that's a
damn.
cobbler. So a cobbler's a shoemaker. A tinker
You're right.
Which is also a kind of pie.
a delicious kind of pie. Blueberry cobbler.
So,
Anyway, but Inventology is a very interesting book too, along with The Structure of Scientific Revolutions by Thomas Kuhn, Kuhn.
I have found myself suddenly immersed in, I had this incredible experience with Grokka, which is the emotional part of it was fun to track, but the intellectual part of it just kind of blew my brain open in a good way. And now I've been exposed to, have you guys heard of quantum information holography?
No.
Well, the theory, it's a theory of the universe. And it basically explains everything. You don't need string theory. You don't need dark energy. You don't need any of this stuff. And basically, what this thing is saying is that on the Planck level, if I understand the term correctly, Planck time is the universe does not. Time actually moves in ticks. If you take time and divide a second into half, divide that into half, divide it into half, you would think you could divide it into halves forever, right?
But no.
Forever, but no.
Eventually you hit the wall.
You eventually get to something called Planck time, at which
This is
I
named
have
after
heard this.
Max Planck.
after Max Planck.
Yeah.
Much of this is named after Max Planck, and there is nothing between Planck ticks. it might be.
It's the smallest divisible
It's a
unit of time.
And
Yes.
that's how you get a sweep secondhand, because you finally get to the point where it doesn't tick.
Well, to give you an idea of how short Planck time is, I think the definition of Planck time is the amount of time it takes the speed of light to cross a hydrogen atom. So it's pretty small little unit of time.
Yeah.
But the universe does move in frames. It is frame based.
Which is why 24 frames looks awesome per
Right.
second.
This is considerably faster than 24 frames.
It's some multiple.
It's hundreds and hundreds of orders of magnitude faster than that. But space-time exists as a sort of a structure. I mean, the best way to think of it is what keeps space open. You know, it's open space, yes, but why doesn't the whole thing just kind of collapse on itself? So anyway,
Yeah.
According to quantum information holography, the universe is composed of these infinitely smaller than atoms and quarks called qubits. And these qubits encode quantum information based on the spin of the particle and the direction of the spin and the angular velocity, and it's all encoded by light. And that the universe is basically sending out interference patterns of light along these qubits, and where the interference patterns amplify itself. You know, when you have two waveforms, you'll get places
they
where
amplify.
where they amplify itself, you get matter. Where they negate itself, you get nothingness. And that certain numbers that all of this information goes out, and almost all of it disassociates immediately, which is why space is empty, because only numbers that are based on prime numbers are not divisible and therefore persist in the universe. I got a lot of studying left to do. But
Holy cow!
Here's the coolest part.
Go ahead.
The whole idea is that at the singularity, at the center of a black hole, exists every possible quantum outcome. That every single possible outcome of the billions and trillions of quadrillions of outcomes all exists inside a singularity. And these quantum probabilities are radiated out through Hawking radiation. And when they get to the event horizon, which is the observable shell around a singularity, they project reality onto the event horizon like a projector screen. And then the event horizon projects this out through the qubits to form the universe. And this
So instead of information being lost going into a black hole, it spews out.
Instead of it being lost,
It's vomiting information at all times.
Yes, and so you're saying, well, how does it do that? Because nothing can escape a black hole. No, light cannot escape a black hole, but quantum entanglement can. And
I would love to hear that light cannot escape a black hole, but you can walk right out.
You walk right out of it. Just gotta make enough noise. You got to talk to the manager.
That's right.
Karen
can escape from a black hole.
So this theory, and there's this artist who does these animations that are just achingly beautiful, consists of, like, when you get down to the bottom level, it's almost like these little bubbles that contain almost entire universes of information in them, and they're rotating and they're spinning and they're interacting with each other and they're forming wave fronts, and some of these wave fronts are stable and others aren't, and the universe is so beautiful to look at because it's all. Look, this whole thing may be complete utter garbage. I really need to
Yeah, but it's
dig
beautiful
into
garbage.
It is beautiful garbage if it's garbage, and it may not be garbage. And basically, what they're saying is that the universe is encoded music, and the music is it's the universe. And this I've heard a long time ago. The universe is comprised of information, and the information is coded in light. It's encoded in the spin and the direction of photons, and that this information gets propagated out through these qubits at infinite speeds through entanglement, and this is what creates the reality. And I can show you guys a link to some of these videos, but you get the feeling looking at these animations that, you know, this is if God were to really design the universe, this is how we would do it. You know, he wouldn't just make like these little particles of atoms like out of clay. You know, it's like no. There's none of these clay, you know, particles. No, it's all encoded. It's all encoded light. It's just achingly beautiful, and I'd like to believe it's true. So
And so from basically your description of the universe made it sound to me like the universe is actually like a cereal box in that most of the inside of it has nothing.
except that you're thinking about space-time as being nothing. These qubits are everywhere. There's no place where these qubits are not shoulder to shoulder, if I understand it correctly.
But they do not comprise matter. They're not categorized as matter.
The interference patterns of waves moving through the qubits defines matter.
Okay.
And
that's where you get something out of nothing, essentially.
That's where you get something out of nothing. Yeah. So for people who might be watching this who don't know nothing, I just sounded really smart. And if you know anything about quantum information holography, I probably mangled the living daylights out of this thing.
And I think it was an episode of MASH where the response that you should give when you hear somebody talking like this is just to go, Bach.
Bach. Funny you mentioned Bach. Because many people
quantum
information holography.
Holography, yes.
And look up on YouTube, Steve. Look up Jason Padgett, Padgett.
Wait, what do you mean, just Steve? You're thinking I can't handle this?
Well, you were the one who was talking about.
I was the one who just asked.
I was the first one to write down quantum information
Wait.
holography.
But you didn't ask.
Steve, look
That's
up quantum information holography. Scott, look up shiny bubbles.
All right,
That's
I've
Mr.
got,
Bubble to you.
I've got
Mr.
them lined
Bubble.
up. I've got a what looks like maybe a 200, 300 word summary, courtesy of Grok,
Nice.
ready to go. So I know what I'm doing this afternoon.
Yeah, man,
I'm
a little
going
talk
to
with
learn
Grok
about the universe.
By the way, I got my kids are looking for a house, and so some realtor sent us a home inspection report about one particular house.
Can I add one thing?
What's that?
I'm so sorry to cut you off.
for it.
I wouldn't jump in if this weren't like
No,
really
please.
important. So Microsoft has built an operating quantum computer.
Yeah.
And they've already solved equations that they estimate would take 10 billion years using a digital computer. They did it in a couple of hours.
Think of all the people put out of work because they were going to work on it for the next 10 billion years.
Think
Now they got
about the
nothing
level
to
of graphics you're going to get on flight sims with this thing. That's what
That's right.
the quantum computer could actually probably build reality and simulate it for you. You know.
Yeah.
But this is really important. This is the report I heard, a secondhand report from the scientists that build the quantum computers, and they say when we activate this thing and we start looking for our answers, the quantum computer does something, and we are convinced that the answer to our questions comes from other universes, that it's communicating with other quantum intelligences, and that it is essentially getting information from somewhere outside of our reality. And this could explain the Fermi paradox. Why don't we? Which is why, if aliens are everywhere, if alien life is everywhere, and we've listened to the entire sky now, why don't we hear them? And it's like, because you're using light, you idiots. Light is slow.
Idiots.
Light is so slow. They're communicating with qubits on the quantum substrata. That's where they're communicating, and it's kind of like
Using, as Einstein would call it, spooky action at a distance.
Well, yeah. So what it's kind of like is, it's kind of like we're sitting there, you know, and we're sitting there with our binoculars and we're looking at a pass, a mountain, you know, like a pass through a little mountain, and we're waiting for the next Pony Express rider to come through on his horse, you know, and we're like, I don't see anything, can't be anything out there. And meanwhile, all of these telecommunication rays and neutrinos and, you know, all this stuff, all this information just blowing past us, and we're looking for radio waves. It's exciting, man. It's really exciting. The whole standard model of cosmology is coming apart in front of our eyes and the James Webb is disassembling it on the macro scale the way that quantum is on the micro scale.
James Webb is one of humanity's greatest achievements.
Without
there is
question.
no doubt in my mind about that.
Yeah, without question.
Once again, an exciting time to be alive. What did you say this guy's name was? Jason Padgett?
Padgett.
I wrote something right above that I cannot figure out what it is that I wrote. I'm looking at it. I cannot read my own handwriting.
One of these videos of his is only 3 months old, and it's also only 4 minutes long.
They're all
Praise
very
God.
short. And they're beautiful to look at. He's an artist.
Yeah,
He's actually an
this
artist.
fits my attention span, my 21st century attention span.
I am so sick of those, and this show is like the worst, right? The one we're doing right now. But I'm so sick of no, that's not true. We're not the worst because we make no promises. These videos where they start off going, there's a new thing called quantum information holography. I'm going to tell you all about it right now. But first, let's roll the intro. Then let's ask you to follow and like me. And then, but 17 minutes later, I'm scrubbing through the video trying to find the point where they actually say anything.
Do you know how hard it is for me not to do a main title sequence for story mechanics? You know how much discipline it took not to do that?
Good.
Just to get to the story.
Get to the damn story.
Yes.
You don't need little windows with little lower thirds. Just split the screen and talk.
I don't think movies in the theater should have opening credits. I think once the film starts, there should never be anything like it. Should just go boom.
Yeah,
a lot of times
Lucas actually got kicked out of the Directors Guild for that.
Who did?
George Lucas.
For having too many opening credits?
It was over. I think it was over Return of the Jedi, not Empire Strikes Back. But if you were the writer and the director, according to these guild rules, I don't know if they're still in effect anymore, if they're even more strict or whatever. But the guild rules were, if you were writer and the director, then you could skip the credits and go right into the movie, which is what he did. With boom, Star Wars,
you're an auteur.
and then
Oh,
the
you mean
scroll.
these are contractual obligations? That's why we have opening credits?
As part of, these are all
of course
written
Union
into the
rules.
Exactly. And if you are not both the writer and the director, and Lucas wasn't for either Empire Strikes Back or Return of the Jedi, he hired those out to Richard Marquand and God, I just forgot his name for Empire. Anyway, he fought him tooth and nail, and they're like, no. The director gets his name. This is the rule. The director gets his name in the opening of the movie, and Lucas wouldn't do it, so he had to quit the Directors Guild of America.
See, I just think when
booted
the
out,
lights
one of the
go
two.
down and they start flashing words on the screen and saying this person did this over and over they're going, this is only a movie. Look, there's a guy whose name you never saw doing something you don't even understand. Here's another guy who did something you can't relate to. And they just constantly barrage you with these names, and then finally they get to the opening of the movie. Imagine the effect if the lights went down and immediately action.
I tend to
Lucas
agree with you.
did that with the Star Wars movies.
But I will say there are many cases where opening credits are useful because you're building the montage that just sets the environment. Like, for example...
Yeah, but do that without the words on the screen.
No, hold on. You can kind of kill two birds with one stone because nobody's gonna sit through a 3-minute montage of Los Angeles if they're not opening credits up there. But if you're running the opening credits and all you're doing is seeing shots of Los Angeles, okay, we got a cop movie that's based in L.A.
Yeah,
I'm not going to look. I'm not going to die on this hill. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
And I'm not going to kill you.
Times.
Oh yeah, and for TV shows, we live in a golden age of TV openers, and it started, I think, 30 years ago now, almost with the Sopranos.
Sopranos. That opening thing from The Sopranos, I watched it every time.
Oh, yeah,
I never ever
can't
fast
skip
forwarded
it.
past that.
I think we've mentioned before that we're binge watching Psych now, which I just love. And anyway, they have done so many versions of the theme song. Like they have a montage at the beginning of the show. After there's a little opening sequence, and then they go to the montage with this music that has their theme song. But they have had different versions of the theme song. They had like a Christian version, and then there was like a Hindu-sounding Bollywood version, and then there was like they did all depending on what that episode was about. They actually changed the theme song and had to re-record that over and over again and tie it in. And sometimes they actually changed the visuals as well. Still one of the funniest shows I've ever seen.
Cool.
Oh, so because being a man of a certain age and trying to, my goal is to not have to have the most durable, heavyweight coffin in America. I'm trying to lose some weight. And so, and I've been successful to a certain extent. And the other day I was like, you know what, these pants, I only had 2 pair of pants that I could wear to work anymore. I'd grown out of every other pair because of my pulchritude. Is that a word? And
Sure.
anyway, so I thought,
It's just not a word I would apply to Scott.
I don't know what it means.
Pulchritude is I would assume that would mean like feminine curviness, like,
Really?
Yeah, that's what I
Well,
would use.
yeah, I
pulchritude.
think that's fair. But anyway, so I thought, oh no, I got to go buy new pants. And if I buy them now before I'm done losing weight, then I'm going to have to buy more new pants. And I went to my closet and I discovered that I had a bunch of pants in there that I completely forgotten about that I'd put back to the back of the closet because I could no longer wear them because I was too big. And I started bringing out pants and trying them on. And I found that I have another 10 or 11 pair of pants that, that currently fit me.
Well done.
Some of which are now a little too big for me. And I'll only be able to wear for a couple of weeks.
Hooray!
Then I'll have to
No, that's
retire them
awesome.
again for when I'm on the rebound. But it was like, going from 2 pair of pants to 12 pairs of pants overnight was miraculous. And to me, that makes all of it worthwhile. Like when people come up with all these exotic reasons why I have to lose weight because of this, that, or the other thing, I'm just like, look, you don't have to go to the store and try on pants, which I
It's like the story about the loaves and the pants.
Yeah, or it's kind of like you put on a jacket that you haven't worn in a long time, and you reach in a pocket and you find like a pair of pants, that you'd completely forgotten about.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But anyway, so if anybody's on the fence right now thinking about maybe I should lose a little weight or whatever, that's what, yeah, you can do it for the kids and grandkids, yes, you can do it so eventually you look better in a swimsuit or whatever, so you're not so embarrassed or whatever. But to me, the prospect of going to like a department store and having to talk to some smarmy person and then go into this room where 1,000 other men have put their naked butts down on a bench and I'm changing into pants and then have to step out of the booth and have my wife eye me and go, I don't know. Like that, to me, that whole thing is miserable. And I just feel like I dodged a bullet.
Well, congratulations.
Yes.
It was wise of you to stow away pants while times were good so that you would have pants when times became lean.
Lean, yeah, when I became lean. Hey, so did you see the thing, and this was on TikTok, so I can't pull up the story here, but it was a clip of Ron DeSantis, governor of Florida, talking about how there were several different grants that the state had been given from the federal government during the Biden administration, and because they had strings attached like DEI stuff and such, and Florida didn't want them. So DeSantis had previously called up the Biden administration and said, hey, we don't want this money. We'd like to give it back. And the people on the other end of the line were like clueless. They didn't know what to do. And so apparently DeSantis's people sat down with Elon Musk's people and said, hey, we don't want this money. And within like a half an hour, they worked out how the Florida could give the money back to the federal government. $900 million.
Wow.
Going back.
That's big money.
That, to me, that's like the dream for states. I used to tell my political colleagues when I was in office about, it was like, we don't have to spend this money that they send us. We could send it back and say, no, thank you. We'll take care of our local needs locally. And they're like, well, if we don't spend that money, somebody else is just going to spend that money. I'm like, let their blood be on their hands.
Yeah, not the way they see it, unfortunately. They see it as, ooh, free money. Other people's money is the best money. It never runs out.
That's right. But anyway, kudos to Governor DeSantis. While he may not have played well on a national stage, he's really good at being a governor.
Yeah,
He surely is.
And that's like $900 million, if I'm doing my math correctly, that is the retail price of 15 Falcon 9 launches.
Nice. Wall Street Journal story.
In other words, what they'll do this month.
People who are on Medicare or Medicaid, rather, and move to a different state, a lot of times, apparently, they're finding out, according to a Wall Street Journal story, that those recipients then have to apply for that in another state, but they keep they apply for it, but the insurance companies are who's getting paid. The government pays the insurance companies to basically administer this Medicaid program. And what they found was a lot of people were being double counted, and insurance companies were being double paid over a 3-year period, recent period. Medicaid recipients, where is it? Federal insurance to cover. Okay, so insurers who were receiving payments from the federal government collected at least $4.3 billion to cover patients who were enrolled or paid for in other states. So they were continuing to pay insurance companies, let's say in Georgia, for a Medicaid patient who was no longer receiving any benefits in Georgia. They were in Texas or somewhere else.
Yeah.
Another little scab picked
Big money.
on this disgusting adventure that I'm so glad that...
There was another scare story. This one was in Ars Technica about Elon Musk because, he is the current permanent object of our 2-minute hate every day.
Yeah.
And this one was, oh my God, he wants to rewrite the Social Security computer programs, and that should take years. This guy rewrote Twitter in weeks, and it functions better than it ever did before. And what is this idea? Okay, so I wrote a thing for PJ the last couple of weeks about this. I also hosted a show about this last week about the IRS computer systems that are so aged. And one of the things I learned is banks, when they update their systems, it takes a few months. It costs a few, for one of the big banks, and it costs a few $100 million. If you're the government, it takes 30 years and $18 billion, $35 billion, and it never gets finished. So in comes Musk, a guy who did this with a global social media platform that collects data at rates that Social Security won't even ever need. And if he can do that, I've got some faith that he can do this with Social Security and save a ton of money, not just in the process of doing it, but in the process of running Social Security from here on out.
If you I genuinely believe this is the reason why he's so determined to colonize Mars. There's nothing about Mars. It's the reason he wants to colonize Mars is he wants to cut loose from that 95% of humanity that's just dead weight. I'm not talking about them. I'm not talking about them morally or so on. In the case of bureaucrats and people who purposely slow things down in order to get paid forever, I am talking specifically about them. But he moves so quickly, and everybody could move that quickly. And I really think that the thing that he's really trying to do is, I think he's leaving the blue planet to get away from the red tape. I really believe it. And once he's there, then the people that are going there are people like him, right? No one's going to be on the dole on Mars, and no one's going to be sleep until 3:00 in the afternoon, on their hydroponic farms. Everybody's going to have to be working their tails off, just like they were on the frontier.
Yep.
And I think that's when I think about where we would be if we ran things the way we could, if we ran things at the speed of our abilities rather than the speed of our bureaucrats' abilities.
Sorry.
No, I'm done.
Oh, okay. It's so weird you're saying this because just 2 days ago, I was having my weekly lunch with my best friend Matt up at our pho place in Castle Rock, and we're talking about this crisis of competence that is ongoing and accelerating. We've got college graduates who can't read from good schools, who are unable to read a work of fiction and glean the meaning from it because they've never learned how to read fiction. All they know is how to watch shorts on YouTube and the like. And everybody is using AI on their job interview, on their job applications, and their college
classrooms.
Admissions.
They're not listening to the lectures. The AI is just doing a idiot's guide to the lecture.
And as I thought about this over lunch, I realized this crisis of competence is the kind of thing that leads to a civilizational collapse. But if you are living on a moon colony or a Mars colony, none of the slackers are going to make it there. They're either going to die real fast or they're never going to get there to begin with. And that's where the savior of the salvation of humanity is off-world.
Which is why I say while we're waiting for Mars, we must colonize Antarctica. Because wherever we go, it's got to be very difficult to live. You can't. You've got to be
not an outpost, a colony that becomes self-sustaining.
Colony.
Yeah.
This is why David Ben-Gurion moved his people to the desert. He said we need to move to like when they set up their little kibbutz.
Did he say
in
that
the
really?
Desert. What's that?
Did he really say that? He appreciated that it'd have to be someplace difficult?
He wanted it to be someplace difficult. He intentionally sought out a place because he knew that his people would have to be hardy and resourceful, and they've literally made the desert bloom. So that's the idea. What it made me think of with college, you say, well, these are good schools where kids can get through without learning to read. Maybe the recognition of this will help develop a new pedagogy in which you can't get by reading, listening, or just listening to summaries or cliff notes and passing tests, where you would actually be engaged in the work, and that fraudulence and phoniness and cheating would surface rapidly because it's easy to fake your way through college, but you can't fake your way through real work. And so if you were, if every class or every course of study in a college was designed to make you active in whatever that pursuit was, then your phoniness would show up immediately. And I think this would be excellent for universities to discover, because then professors who were so-called brilliant, knowledgeable guys couldn't get by droning on in a lecture and then handing out a test.
One of the best history teachers I had, I wish I could remember his name, was at a community college in Northern California, College of the Redwoods. And I took 2 or 3 of his classes, and each time the midterm and the final exam were the same. He wrote a question on the blackboard. He gave you a blue book. You wrote an essay. I'm
very curious to know how. I think there'd be a lot of pushback at first, but I think it would probably really turn out well. I wonder how Gen Z college students would deal with the fact if you had a professor, a small class, let's say 20 or something, and the professor just basically said, okay, we're leaving the classroom. We're all going to go outside. We're going to go sit under a tree, and we're going to put all our electronics away. We're not going to have any electronics. We're going to sit under a tree. I'm going to tell you some things, and we're going to discuss it. Just this Aristotelian, back and forth. I really wonder how they would react to that.
I think they need it. They probably love it once they got into it.
I kind of think they would love it, but I think they'd fight it at first. No devices, no devices, nothing. We're all going to sit in a circle here. We're all going to be close together. Have some apples and some water, and we're going to sit out here for 2 hours and we're going to talk about this every day. If it's raining, we'll stay inside. And do it inside.
You got to get out there if it's raining.
Well, I agree.
But
I'm afraid they would die.
I'm melting. Yeah, my cousin, this is a long time ago, used to have a little store downtown in the Springs, and he had a cell phone zapper with a remote control. And if somebody would duck into the store talking on their phone or answer the phone and start talking in the store, and they'd lose their cell signal and
nice.
Walk out. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, that was, what's his name? Steve Wozniak's first invention was a device that could mess up TV signals.
No, it was the phone freaker.
Are you sure? I thought there was a thing that where you could mess up TVs.
No, it was for making free long-distance calls.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. No, I think you're conflating his first project after he left Apple, which was the Universal TV remote.
There was something that would allow you to mess up the TV, and I can't remember what that was. But maybe it wasn't him. Maybe I just invented it right now.
Right now, yeah.
It was Ron Popeil.
That's right.
It's actually one of my favorite Weird Al Yankovic songs.
Which one is?
Mr. Popeil. It's done in the style of the B-52s. It's not a parody. It's an original, and Weird Al's doing his best Fred Schneider from the B-52s, selling you all the Ron Popeil stuff, and it's a classic.
Have you ever heard Hardware Store?
No.
By whom?
Oh, dude. By Weird Al Yankovic? During the break between now and when we record our shows, which we'll start doing now, it's a 3-minute listen. It is the most amazing song. In fact, let me send you the link because there's one that's got a just let me send you the link.
Okay.
It's simply unbelievable. It's unbelievable.
Awesome.
All right, ready to get to work, boys?
Yes, sir.
Sure, what the hell?
Sorry, I'm making notes here. You guys have so much wisdom is spilling out of you that I had to catch some of it. Ladies and gentlemen, we are grateful for your devoted attention to these episodes and the way you encourage us on an ongoing basis, the money that you provide for us to be able to do this, and the way you bring in others from outside of the what do they call this? Like the not the herd. There's got to be a better word for that. The coven.
Clan?
No, the clan. No, wait, stop. It's gotten out of control. But anyway.
Wow, that escalated quickly.
Let me just say that this is an unscripted show, and we are not responsible for the words that come out of our mouths.
A gaggle of conservatives.
Yes, from outside of the gargle, whatever it is. For Bill Whittle and Stephen Green, I'm Scott Ott. Thanks to the members at BillWhittle.com for making Right Angle possible.